All right, welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur Brand Podcast. Today I have a very special guest, April Clarke, and April and I, just as a starting point, April and I are members of Entrepreneur Organization. You guys have heard me talk about EO a lot. I'm in the Baltimore chapter. April is in the Detroit chapter, but I'm going to let her introduce herself and then we are going to get started. So, April, tell us a little bit about you, what you do, your business, and if there's anything you want to add from the family perspective, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Of course, my name is April Clarke. I am a mother to three. All of my kids are 5 years apart, so that makes it interesting, 14, 9, and 5. And I also run a non-emergency transportation company here in the Metro Detroit area. So we've been around since actually 2003. It's been a while, and we have been able to scale and serve the area pretty well. And we also operate a hub in our state capital of Lansing. Yeah, we serve people who have mobility challenges, people with challenges due to age, illness, or injury. And we really enjoy serving our community that way. I'm also a member and the current president of EO Detroit in my nearly 10th year as a member. And I've served on the board for multiple years. It's really an honor to now serve as president. And I just started that journey. So far, so good. I'm enjoying that. And yeah, and that's how I know you.
Yes, yes. And I am also in my 10th year. So I guess we joined around the same time. And I am going to be coming back to EO because I have some questions about that. But I wanted to start this as entrepreneurs, we all have that moment when we made that decision to become an entrepreneur. There's an inflection point. Something may have happened, some event or a particular moment in our lives that tilted the scale towards entrepreneurship. So I want you to take us to that moment. What was that moment for you when you decided this is the path you want to take?
Wow. I think it's in my genes to be an entrepreneur on some level. My father actually owned or started a taxi cab business years ago, right? So he wasn't your ideal entrepreneur, but he definitely wanted to be his own man, chart his own destiny, make his own money on his terms.
Right.
He wasn't extremely successful at that, but I got a bug for at least wanting or desiring to have something for myself. It didn't really hit me really hard. That seed didn't start to grow until years later after I had been laid off from my place of employment twice. And that's when I understood that I had no control over my destiny. I was at the whim of other employers. And while I liked what I did, I love my work, I didn't want to be in that position again. So it was in my mind to have something as a backup plan. And you've heard of the term the side hustle. When
Right.
I got my next employment opportunity, I always had the side hustle. So that side hustle then became the permanent thing. So,
No, I actually have a similar story in a different way. Mine, so I was working full time. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur and I was juggling between law school and business school. And I'd actually accepted into law school and I deferred for 2 years, just not feeling it. So I went to business school, got my MBA, and while I was there, I started my first business, but I was still fully employed after that. And so there was that point where when am I going to quit to go do it? And then I got laid off. And it was a dramatic situation where I felt like it was the company I was working for got bailed out and a whole bunch of us just got laid off. And I remember that moment getting home and feeling a certain way about it, even though it's something that I wanted to happen because it was forcing my hand because the money was good. So I was staying in it. But then when I got laid off, it made a big impression on me, and I was like, never again. I'm never gonna put myself in a position to do that. So I can relate to that. So on entrepreneurship, I think that we learn a lot about ourselves through entrepreneurship. And over the years, I can say that for myself. But what I'm curious about is for you, what have you learned about yourself, just who you are through this journey of entrepreneurship? What are some of the things that jump out?
wow. So one of the big things, it's interesting. I heard someone say that when you have this feeling of imposter syndrome, I know that we've heard that term a lot, folks bring that up a lot. especially when you're first in a venture, you're doing something for the first time. This person always said to remember you are doing it for the first time and you're growing.
Mm.
No one starts off as an expert. So I went to business school. I have that MBA, and I will have to say that in practice, business is a little bit it's challenging. You can put those academic tools to work, but you really have to feel your way through things as an entrepreneur. I have been learning to allow myself to grow, like
Mhm.
continuously grow
Mhm.
and learn on the job in
Right.
every way. And I'm
Right.
nowhere close to being an expert along this journey, but I'm allowing myself to just travel along the journey and see where it takes me. So
Right.
that's one thing I've learned about myself, that I can just allow myself to grow and not be so hard on myself if I make a mistake or I'm not doing things well or I'm not using those MBA tools.
Right.
Not an
Right.
expert. So
Right.
not having the imposter syndrome, learning not to let that make or break my decision making or something I want to try and do. And the other thing is that I can just trust my gut.
Mm.
I when I was younger doing this, I always felt as if, okay, I needed more experience, I needed more wisdom. But a lot of times we are prepared. We just don't, we work hard at what we do. I can just trust my gut. I can trust
Right.
myself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, awesome. And on the flip side of that, I think that we also learn things about people, whether people we hire, our family, our spouses, our friends, employees, peers. So, what are some of the lessons or insights that you've learned about people as you go on this entrepreneurial journey? What has jumped out?
so this is probably a little bit tough to say, but it's true. Like not everyone along your entrepreneurial journey will support you.
Yep.
Uh, they won't support you. They're financially, they're not always going to invest. They're not always going to say that, give you that cheerleading support either.
Yes.
So you have to go at it with the mindset that, you to self-motivate in some
Yeah.
ways, to
Right.
continue along the journey, trust your instincts and keep it moving. You won't always get that support.
Right.
And you will oftentimes get some support, but
Right.
it can be those people that you look for it from the most
Right.
that will not support you. So that can be something to expect. At
Right.
least,
Right.
of course, that's been my experience.
Right.
In terms of hiring, I've learned a lot about just learning how to work with different personality types and different people.
Mm.
When it comes to your perspective and outlook on various things in life, even business, there are people that will not meet you at the same place at the same time in terms of perspective. So just knowing that in my interactions with people, meeting people where they are,
Right.
really working hard at understanding how to collaborate with various different types of people, because not everybody's on the same page all the time. It's been a real challenge, but really insightful and a constant learning process, just simply working with people.
Now, one thing you said that jumped out at me was the support thing, our disappointment with people that we think should be the ones that would be in our corner, be the cheerleaders. And one thing I read somewhere was that your family is not your customers, your friends are not your customers. But initially, when you start and everybody excited, and then you open your doors and it's like crickets, and you're like, whoa, this is actually a very lonely experience. And it is you who signed up for this. And out of love, some of them may have doubts or out of jealousy, whatever it is, they're not in your corner. So I guess my question is, in those lonely moments, which we all feel as entrepreneurs, where like everything is going wrong and you're feeling alone, challenged, what mindset do you get into? And can you share your thought process around that, how you've been able to navigate those situations?
Yeah, number one, remember why you started doing this in the first place. Go back to the why, right? For me, it's family, really making sure that dream of always wanting to be my own woman and charting my own destiny actually comes to fruition,
Right.
having some type of legacy. Always go back to why.
Mhm.
And that will always bring you back into a
Right.
space of
Right.
wanting to move forward. And
Yeah.
then the second part is when you don't have the support, naturally. If it somehow doesn't exist, then we have to be self-motivated to also intentionally create the community and the support that we need.
Right.
So go out and seek it. And I've
Right.
done a lot of that,
Right.
including
Right.
being a member of the
Which is a great segue into EO. And for those of you who don't know, and EO is a peer-to-peer organization of entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. We are member-led organization, and for me, it's been a life-changing experience being in EO for the last 10 years. So, how did you came into EO, and what would you describe the experience to somebody that has no clue of what this, because people are used to networking events. People are used to being in networks where everybody's like getting, how would you describe your experience within EO to somebody who has no clue?
So I was recruited in a way. I was asked to join. I was pretty much told to join. So I pretty much did as I was told.
Okay.
Years ago, I happened to be a mentor to some high school students where the mentoring was happening at a high school, my old high school. And while introducing myself to the students there, the person who led that organization, or currently leads it today, said, you know what, you'll be good for EO. Actually, you should join. And I'm like, I'll think about it. People tell you things all the time. You're just like, oh, it's another networking, other
Right.
organization. And
Right.
by that time, I was sick of networking,
Uh,
not in the way of making connections and meeting new people. It was that transactional nature of networking where people are expecting you to buy into their business or service and
right.
vice versa. There was no relationship, true
Right.
connection.
Right.
So I was actually missing that true connection.
Mhm.
And so couldn't really articulate it at the time. I just knew I was tired of the traditional networking.
Right.
Happened to be a part of this event, and the leader of that organization pretty much told me this is where I needed to be. I needed to be at EO. When I tried to brush it off, she said, no, you're going to be a member. You're going to be a member. I actually inquired about it and filled out my application and joined. It was that
Wow.
easy. I didn't even go to
It's
a
a
test drive
right.
or event or anything like that. And just to let you know a little bit about this woman, the fact that she was in a service-based organization helping kids, I just admired who she was and what she did. So it was that type of like referral. This is a great network for you. I trusted her. So I trusted her. I trusted the process, and here I am. So
Wow.
that's how
Wow.
I became a member. Definitely did not think of EO after those first few interactions as the traditional networking group. And in fact, it truly isn't. What I've been blown away by is the fact that this is a group of people who are intentional about making a community out of entrepreneurs, people who are intentional about being better business owners or better entrepreneurs, as well as better people,
Right.
and wanting to make better impact and more impact in their communities. So I
Right.
feel like I am amongst like-minded
Right.
peers.
Right. What is the one thing that one moment in EO that you will never forget?
Wow. One moment in EO that I will never forget. Had a lot of unforgettable moments. I will say I will never forget any time that I actually travel outside of the US,
Mhm.
going to the global leadership conferences and seeing how EO is more than just what chapters in my own backyard, and
Right.
how much of an impact it has across the globe,
Right.
and meeting so many different people from so many different walks of life. I met you, and I believe it was Cape Town
Yeah.
first.
Yep. Yep.
Right. And
Yep.
then I think I've seen you in other places. Seeing all of these folks, I remember sitting in a member's home in Cape Town. The women of EO in Cape Town open up their homes to other women of EO, and simply just going there to a stranger's home,
Right.
have
Right.
this
Right.
meal that
Right.
was well done with these personal chefs,
Yeah.
and simply just breaking bread over conversation,
Yeah.
and going deep in
Yeah.
a way that you would never experience in just any organization, because we're so intentional about our connections and our deep bonding.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm always blown
Right.
away
Right.
by the
Right. Right.
international events. But
Right.
that was one moment that like truly let me know that this is different. And
Yeah.
it's
No, and for me, my answer to that is also in South Africa and just that particular conference. And I did a post-conference trip that was life-changing. But I agree with you. When I got to Cape Town and I was invited by an EO Cape Town member that I knew, he said, I just arrived, like literally dropped my bags off. I got a WhatsApp message from her. She said, look, trust me on this. Come to this address, get an Uber, come. So I pulled one of my buddies and I said, okay, something is happening that is going to be great. Let's go. So we got an Uber. It took an hour to get there. And we got there. It was this winery. She lives on a winery, and it was a whole bunch of EO members that were there. It was probably about 20 of us plus, and it was like a 7 course meal.
I think I was
And
there.
wait, where is it? Were you
I
there?
think how many, it was 20 people. Maybe there
Yeah,
were a little bit. I had an experience at a winery too, just
yeah.
like this.
And it was like in the middle of nowhere, and it took an hour to get there. And I'm sitting there thinking, this cannot be happening. And after that meal was had so many good conversations, and I'm thinking, if this was the conference, if this is all I came for, I am full. Like I would have been good. And the conference hasn't even started yet. And it went on to be an amazing experience. And then I did my trip after that, which was once in a lifetime experience. So my experience in EO has been different the same way. Like similar experiences with you. It's just been the intentionality of the organization and people you meet and places you could be in. And you could go to the same place. But the fact that you're there with fellow EOers and the conversations you have and experiences is definitely life changing. Yeah, absolutely. So to wrap up the entrepreneur conversation, a lot of people who are watching, some are entrepreneurs, some are would-be entrepreneurs. If right now you were to talk to yourself go to 2003 when you started your business, knowing what you know now, what are the two pieces of advice you would give yourself then, knowing what you know now?
Oh, wow. Start building your network
Mm,
early.
mm,
Build your support network early. I just visited with some students at the University of Michigan at their Center for Entrepreneurship. And I think I shared this with you recently about this notion of
right,
balance. We tend
right,
to talk about balance once we're in the midst of all these things that we're
right,
doing that are overwhelming.
right,
But let's tackle that conversation ahead of time. If you're
right,
thinking about being an entrepreneur, you're going to have to know ahead of time that you're going to be juggling a lot of balls. If there's other things you want to do in your life, if you want to be a parent, if you want to be involved in multiple organizations, if philanthropy is your thing, figure out ahead of time how you're going to juggle all of those balls. And I say it's great to do the juggling, but eventually a ball is going to drop. So you need to be sure that there's someone in your support network that'll be there to help you catch those balls,
right.
because you're really going to need folks to be in your corner. And not always, like we just discussed, is that going to be organic for you. And people will drop out. So you got to make sure that you have a full network of support. Go in knowing that there are plenty of things that you're not going to know.
Mm, mm,
Like I said,
mm.
I went I got an MBA, and yeah, great. I learned some great things, but in practice, entrepreneurship is hard.
Yeah,
So really seek out ways to improve. And that's the great thing about EO, because there's so many opportunities to grow as an entrepreneur and learn things to assist in that. But know that there's going to be so much that you don't know. You're going to have to seek out their support just to get the work done. Be open to receiving all kinds of contributions from your support network, whether it be to help you get things done in your personal life or even in your business life.
yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that the whole question of balance, which is one of the things I wanted to talk to you about because you have such a good framework around it, is also the guilt that comes to some of us about the need for balance. We feel like we have to, and I mentioned this before, I think as entrepreneurs, we can have it all, but we can't have it all at the same time. So the trade-off is, okay, what are you willing to give, as you said, in that moment? And you have to understand what the trade-off is. And I keep For me, like one of the questions is about you feel this guilt, even when you feel like you made the right trade, there is still societal pressure
Mhm.
to fit into certain boxes and to play certain roles. And those, I think that you have to be deep in your conviction of what you're doing it for. So I can definitely,
Go back to the why.
exactly. I was, yep,
And I
yep,
always say to be aware that these feelings that we get, that we feel guilty, we are going against societal norms when we do these kinds of things. I know as a woman, I'm going against the societal norm of being first a nurturer and caretaker. So I'm gonna have these feelings of guilt because this is the way I've been conditioned,
right,
but it doesn't have to be that way.
right,
Our lives, especially when you are intentional about the support network up front, we are not the only caretakers in our space, and we should be taken care of as well. And I say
right,
that specifically for women, but again,
right,
if there are these things that require, it's an obligation for us to pay attention to, again, that's more societal pressure than what's real. And
right.
what's real is that there should be people in this village, in this community that help us pick up the pieces. Yeah.
No, that's a fantastic segue into the next half of our talk, which is focused on the work that has connected us at this moment. So I know that the issue of community building is at the core. So my first question about that is, it's a two-part question. The first one is, why now? You're a successful entrepreneur, you have a thriving business, and now this is something that you are pursuing. And why now? And then how do you define this season? Is it your purpose? Is this your new mission? Is this the next stage of what you want to do? How do you look at it and how do you define it?
Interesting. So the first one is why now? What was the second question?
Second question is like, how do you define this season? Because I think the reason why I'm asking is that a lot of people, the question of purpose, the question of purpose. And I feel like as entrepreneurs, sometimes we think that our business is not necessarily our purpose. Sometimes we go into business and then we find our purpose. Or sometimes our business is our purpose. Or sometimes we have the mindset that your purpose changes in season. So I'm trying to get an understanding of how are you defining this new thing in your life?
So I don't think this is a different season for me. I just feel like I'm better prepared to be able to contribute in the way that I want to now.
Okay.
I've always been a person who's wanted to, my thing was, I'm going to leave this space better than where I found it or what I thought, the shape, the condition that they found it in. I'm going to make a positive contribution into every aspect of my life, whether it's my children, wife, my friendships, my family, my work.
Hmm.
And I want to always be a person that uplifts and doesn't take away. I want all those contributions to be positive and lift people up. So that's just how I've been from even my participation. I'm not just a member, I've been on the board for years, the current president, wanting to give something back and wanting to be in work in purpose.
Right.
Particularly now, what I'm seeing is there's a lot going on in our society right now. There's a lot of division in our country. There needs to be a way to bring people, not everyone back together, but have people feel as if they are surrounded by people that care for them and can support them. We have loneliness and depression being an epidemic in this country. For entrepreneurs, it's even worse because we're facing not even just loneliness in our personal lives, but carrying the weight and burden of running businesses and feeling alone in that. There has to be a message and a way to get people to understand that, one, they're not alone, and two, understand how to seek communities of support so that these feelings of isolation, of loneliness don't take over, and we can inject some joy and happiness back into our lives.
Right.
So that's the season, I believe, or the why now.
Right.
But the season, I think I've always been this person and just now channeling it in a different way. My companies are about service,
Right.
particular type of person in my community, but definitely providing something that's needed in the community. detrimentally needed and will continue to be needed as our population ages. So yeah, it's just who I am, and I'm just channeling it in a different way.
Yeah, no, that's and in our discussions, you've talked about the people that you are trying to serve. We can serve everybody. So you've identified a number of, I will call it target audience that you're serving. And one of them you mentioned is caregivers. I want you to talk about that in just a follow-up of what you talked about. Why you've identified a unique need that caregivers have. And when people think about caregivers, they think about official paid. So, can you speak to that a little bit and what you provide or how you intend to support them?
Caregivers are not only the paid nurses or assistants who help out at home if we were to become ill or injured, or to help our seniors or our parents. And I'm at that age where my parents may need assistance, but there are other caregivers. They're primarily their parents, mothers who are who are looked at as the primary caregivers in a home or when it comes to raising kids, but also dads. Also, all of those other family members or people that are part of the village who actually nurture and help raise children. So there are a lot of caregivers. I primarily take a look at women because, of course, I'm a woman and I know that experience well of nurturing my own children, being there for my own children, and taking on the responsibility of shaping their lives. And I know how much work it is to
Right,
not only nurture children but also nurture a business as well.
right.
So that's the reason for the caregiver target there.
Yeah. Now, there's also, I read one of the things you wrote about. I wrote here that like women who want to pursue their dream without guilt, and then women who want success and family on their own terms.
Mhm.
So clearly there is a common theme of the conflict between what you want and then the support that is needed. If somebody's listening to this today and they are in that dilemma or they're feeling that guilt, what do you have to say to them and what specifically should they be looking for in being able to, be able to pursue that dream without guilt and also pursue success and family without the guilt? Why is that important to you?
Again, as a woman, we've talked about this already, societal pressures
Right,
of society wants us to focus on the traditional role as a woman.
right,
And again, we fall into this idea of trying to find balance and we drive ourselves crazy because, of course, balance doesn't exist.
right,
And a lot of us shy away from our potential early on because we simply can't imagine managing all these things by ourselves.
right,
We simply don't have any direction on how to incorporate all the things we want to do and desire into a life that's now filled with maybe caring for parents, caring for children, caring for a household, all the stuff that society deems is our obligation. Over the years, we have gotten away from that somewhat, but it's still a barrier for a lot of women to
right,
become entrepreneurs.
right,
I've been in several meetings where people think about what about how do we get women help for their children so that they can pursue some of their entrepreneurial dreams.
right,
There's just so much in terms of what we're obligated to do as women and how much of that is at the forefront when we're considering an entrepreneurial journey. But we shouldn't be alone in that. And what I aim to offer is women a path to empowerment to seek their dreams and to seek networks of support so that they can have it all. Like you
right,
said, not at the same time,
right,
but it is potentially a way for you to have it all with the right support network.
right, right.
Like the path, so again, the path of empowerment to pursue what you dream and
Hmm.
not be pressured to, again, sit in the box of nurturer and caregiver
Hmm.
solely and
Hmm.
having to wait to pursue those dreams.
So, can you give an example? What would that look like for somebody? Just if you have a persona in mind, if you have somebody in mind that you like could be the ideal person you can profile to, it's like, how can we visualize what you're saying?
Okay, so I'll take myself as an example. Like I said before, when you're starting off on this path, it's great to be able to understand why you're doing it,
Right,
what you value, and what you're willing to compromise, but also figure out what your support network looks like ahead of time
Right.
so that you have the right people in place, the right resources in place to be able to do the things you want to do.
Right.
Because again, you're gonna drop some balls, but again, someone should be there to pick them up. And look at the support network not as simply some transactional group. Like I said, I don't like the standard way of networking, but look for true community. We talk about villages raising kids. It takes a village,
Mm-hmm.
but it takes a village to support an adult too.
Right. Right.
So when you are a caregiver, if you are a female entrepreneur and you do have all of these things, other things going on in your life, think about your village, what that village consists or who that village consists of, and think about ways in which you can both receive, that nurturing and that support, but also ways you can contribute and offer that to someone else. I believe true community works when there are givers and takers. So true community has any one person can drop a ball at any time and there's someone there to pick it up.
Yes.
So look for spaces of support where you can contribute and receive support as well. So for me, a lot of the networks and organizations that I'm involved in offer support, but I also contribute as well and receive so much from even making a personal contribution to my networks.
Right. Well, that's great. And one of the things you said, which I'm going to have to process, is it takes a village to support an adult too. I don't think that's said enough. I don't even think that's a concept that our society really embraces. And so I have three more questions and then we'll be done. But the next follow-up to that is support. We are trained to think that we can do it all. We have to lift ourselves, and that when you're getting support, it is weakness, or it could even socialism. And people will throw some names out there to make you feel like you are not in that mindset of the ultimate capitalist mindset. You pull yourself by the bootstrap, and I know that's a word that we've talked about a lot. So what would you say to those people?
I hate that term, pulling yourself up by what are these bootstraps? No, it's interesting because that is very characteristic of the idea of the American dream, right? You can chart your own way. You can use whatever resources you have available. You should be able to pull yourself up by the bootstraps you do have and create success for yourself out of thin blue air at times. And the reality of that is that a lot of people don't have the bootstraps, the boots, the laces, the soles. There's just always some missing pieces. And even more real is the fact that many people, I would dare to say there's no one that has not had support in reaching their level of success. Someone that reached out to them, someone that mentored them, someone that helped them navigate. I believe everyone has had a bit of support.
Yes.
So the idea of the bootstrapping your life, bootstrapping your business financially, that's one thing, and we can have another conversation about that. But bootstrapping your journey to success is a myth and is detrimental to your ideal success, and especially how quickly you can actually reach success. So I would never suggest anyone bootstrap their lives in that way. We can only get where we want to be with the right kinds of support, and it does take a village to be able to reach your level, your ideal dream, your
Right.
ideal level of success.
Yeah. There are a lot of quotes. There's a lot of quotable moments in this podcast with you today. So I'm gonna have to go back and look at some of those. So final two questions. First one is, what is on the horizon for you? So you said that this is like an evolution. You're prepared for this moment. So what is on the horizon for you? What can people expect on this journey from you?
Yeah, number one, being really vocal about this idea of community. You'll probably see more of me
All
on
right,
various
all
channels
right, all right.
really talking about this because I think it's something people really need to have a discussion about. I think there's just a lot of lonely people out here that don't have any idea on where to pursue the village that they need.
Right,
So let's talk about it.
right.
So I'd love to be able to spark those conversations and continue to have this kind of dialogue. I also have started to write a book about this.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, and I really want to be able to tell my readers that our ideas of success are based on this idea of the Lone Ranger mentality when we pursue the American dream. And it's really not true.
Right.
It is characteristic of the American dream, but we really truly don't have to buy into it. And if we quickly pursue community in pursuing our dreams, we'll reach our dreams much, much faster and we'll be much more happier in the
Yeah.
process.
Awesome. Said. No, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to that book whenever it comes out. Last question. So if people want to follow your journey, follow you or keep up with what you're doing, how can they connect with you?
All right. So of course there's my LinkedIn channel. It's just April Clarke MBA. You can find me on LinkedIn that way. And then I also have my own website. It's aprilclarke.com.
Oh,
Um,
very
with an
simple.
E, Clarke. Yeah, and you can follow me there as well.
The website is April Clarke, Clark with a K-E,
That's
and .com, and of course on LinkedIn. So, April, I got to say, this has been a really insightful podcast interview. I hope you saw it that way. I have a lot of moments that I need to go back and review, and a lot of quotable moments, actually. It's been great having you, and thank you for being on this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.